I was recently camping and hiking in the Scottish mountains with a friend. I was glad to be able to do that, and I'll maybe put a smattering of clips in this video, but I want to talk about some of the legalities behind that, specifically the Outdoor Access Code and the Land Reform Act of 2003, which I was taking time to read just last week. I want to share a little bit about that and my thoughts on it, but also how that intersects with some quite important points with Scottish church history, which I'll share later on. I've been making videos on the outdoors for the past year or so. I'm a little bit held back because of an injury now, but the shift that I've taken with creating is that I want to create what I consume. In other words, to be able to share some of my thoughts on all the various nerdy quarters of the internet and different things that I watch. And so with that, I want to unpack a little bit of the history and my relationship with the Land Reform Act, which came into place in 2003. That was the year that I finished high school and really started enjoying lots of different outdoor pursuits. To connect that, here's a clip that I recorded out and about of me talking about the Land Reform Act. Bear with me with my low budget recording options. In terms of rights of access, I think the canals, particularly the Scottish canals, are a great example of where lots of things intersect. You've got history, for example, the industrial history of the canals, but then of course the way in which nature, which you maybe hear in the background, has come to be a part of that. And then in terms of rights of access, this is a place where you're going to see fishing, people walking, exercising their dogs, running, cycling, and you'll also see people paddling. This is a section of canal that I've enjoyed. I have cycled here with the family. I've run here late at night. I'm just using the moonlight. In fact, I nearly fell in on that pontoon along there, but that's another story. This has also been a place where I have practiced and learned how to canoe. When I first got my canoe a couple of years ago, I was up and down here learning all different experiences, particularly the effect of wind on a canoe. I remember getting kind of spun around a couple of times. Also inspired by Beau Miles, the backyard adventurer. I've got a plan at some point, once my shoulder's better, to paddle from my home, to walk from my home with a canoe up to the canal, paddle along to Kirkintilloch, and then take the River Kelwin back. I think it'll be a fun little adventure for some point in the future. So over the years, the Land Reform Act is something that I've really enjoyed the privileges of, and it's been good recently just to look at some of the nuts and bolts of what that is, and also looking at some of the history in terms of how that came to be, because of course we're looking at the importance of giving rights of access to all rather than just a limited few, and we're balancing with that some of the history and the culture around the right to roam and what that means, and what it's stopping is from landowners and others having too much undue influence on how people actually enjoy where it is that they live. And I believe, I've just seen a squirrel, stop and look at it for a moment. I believe that connects quite interestingly to our Scottish church history and actually some of the uniqueness around that as well. So actually I'm just walking up to the church just now, and I'll share some of my thoughts here. High definition cameras here and over there, and stage lights and all the rest, and here I am using my very much jerry-rigged camera setup. I'm the minister here at Torrance Parish Church, and I want to share how actually my vocation and my role connects into the Land Reform Act. And I promise this is not some bait and switch to shoehorn in speaking about my faith, about the Bible, about my vocation. I promise that, because actually I genuinely believe there's a fascinating connection between the culture and history and the codified law of 2023 and the history and culture and actually what's written down in our acts in terms of the Church of Scotland. Let me connect as briefly as I can 3 separate dates: 1843, 2021 and 2025. In 1843 there was the forming of the Free Church of Scotland. We refer to that in Scottish church history as a disruption, and the catalyst for that was a church, a congregation's right to freely elect a minister. And within the history, and I would not profess to be some keen history buff, but I studied it at uni, but within the history there's this sense that actually the landowners were having an undue influence on who the minister of a church would be. And so that led to this disruption, and actually it connects back in. A great number would come back into the Church of Scotland in 1929. If you really want to nerd out, you can go and look on Wikipedia, and there's this great schemata. It looks like some confusing wiring diagram talking about the churches that went out and came back in. But that's 1843, what happened then. And you're blending history, but also kind of culture in this sense of being able to freely elect, in this case, just as one might freely rule. And so that's 1843. Connecting that to 2021, I came here as minister, and I preached as nominee from this very lectern, would preach from the Bible, and then after that, people would vote. And the people that selected me, the committee, they had been kind of selected from the number of the church, and there's a whole process for kind of navigating that. And then on that Sunday in late 2021, I preached, and the congregation voted. And that ties into this history, this culture, this identity that a minister can't just be foisted upon a church in our Presbyterian governance and structure. And so from 2021, we go right up to 2025, and the most recent iteration of the Act, which I took time to read, and it's called this, let me make sure I get the title right: the Call, Election and Appointment of Ministers of Word and Sacrament. That's me, I'm a minister of Word and Sacrament. And it's Act 11, 2025. And actually, just like the 2003 Land Reform Act, there's companion documents that go along with that to help you understand. But if you were to take a careful reading of that, you see that actually there is careful balances and rules set down to make sure that there is no undue influence. There's no way that actually the congregation are going to have this instance where their minister is going to be foisted upon them. And just like the Land Reform Act, that balances culture, history, laws, in this case the acts of the General Assembly. And I think that's fascinating. So this has been a condensed and internet-friendly version of what I've been thinking about of late. It's taken me a week or so to film this video in different sections. I've been working on a new workflow as well in terms of video making and all sorts of nerdy stuff like that. And I've definitely lost some continuity points because I'm wearing different clothes. And I even had a haircut yesterday. This has been my first foray into longer form videos in a while, and it's been really good to do. Be certainly glad of other people's thoughts and views, particularly corrections if I have been in error with my grasp of different acts and different history and all such things. I've enjoyed though being able to kind of put my finger, as it were, on a connection between the world of outdoor pursuits and my grasp and understanding of church history and how that relates to my vocation and role. I know as well there's lots of other connections, and I guess one of the ones that's come out in conversations whilst I've been chatting to people and making this video is that there really is lots of shining examples of individuals, both in the realms of outdoor pursuits, in the realms of church, and sometimes kind of bridging both of those things, where you have these individuals that really help others to find their feet, to find their understanding, and really enjoy the rights and privileges that are theirs. I'm going to call it a day at that. I think that's enough of filling up one small corner of the internet for now.